Whenever I come to Delhi, I have a special feeling of joy because this is a city where I grew up in, where I went to school in Delhi Public School at St. Stephen's College, city where I had my first job, worked with All India Radio, city where I even, to pay for my college, was a tourist guide for a while where I showed foreign tourists the glories of the Red Fort and Jama Masjid and Qutub Minar, Hauz Khas, Humayun's tomb, old fort, etc. So I have many wonderful memories joined to that. And when I come to an event like this and have the opportunity to speak to you in Delhi, my joy is doubled. We're talking about embracing change, the new normal. You know, whenever a major catastrophe happens, like this pandemic, which affects everyone's lives, all of us are in a state of shock. That's the first reaction. The next thing that happens is when you realize that this is real, a period of mourning sets in. People have lost jobs, people have lost lives. Most importantly, almost all of us have lost a way of life. A way of life has been lost by everyone. So there's a sense of, oh my God, when will things get back to normal? The fact is, there is no normal. Our lives have changed forever. And we have to adapt to this. Now, how do we adapt to change? I adapted by looking at what happened around me. Film work dried up, voiceover commentaries dried up, events dried up, appearances dried up, movement of all kind dried up. And suddenly I had this vacuum on my hands. And I adapted by writing my book, my autobiography, which went on, as she mentioned, to become a national bestseller and also Amazon's most popular book of the year 2021. So, thank you, I appreciate it. But you know, even in my book, it's full of stories of how misfortune is changed to fortune. I had the misfortune, because my parents were very idealistic people, there was no money in the family, I had the misfortune of having to work my way through college. But that led to my working with All India Radio, because I had to pay for my college. It led to my interviewing the Beatles, as I've explained in my book. But after that, I had the misfortune that All India Radio, after broadcasting it, erased the interview. This made me sit and think. It was a shock to my system. It was a loss, confusion. It made me decide to leave Delhi and go to Bombay and make a different fortune for myself. And as you can see, that misfortune turned into another kind of fortune. I worked in Bombay in advertising for 5 years for Lentas and 𝗂𝗏𝗱𝗏 as their film chief. But to cut a long story short, which is all written about, I joined films. And I had successes. But my misfortune was that I was not the kind of actor that liked singing and dancing. And realizing this, I realized that I had to cast my net further and look for opportunities abroad, which led to my finding a role in Italy, that role making me a star in Italy, and I thought everything's fantastic. Again, misfortune. I was so identified with this role of Sandokan that I created this iconic pirate that Italy knew and loved. He was like the Robin Hood of Italy. That they couldn't think of casting me in anything else. So I said, okay, push forward. I went on to Hollywood. Then with time, etc., Italy understood by seeing various films that I'm not just that character, things changed. So that misfortune also disappeared. In Hollywood, I was in the Bond film, I was in the Bold and Beautiful, I did various foreign actors' roles. But some bad investments led to financial disasters for me. Again, I found a way of resurrecting my life, rebuilding it to the point where I was honored by Italy, where they gave me their highest civilian honor. It's the equivalent to being knighted. It's called 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗏. So, the point is, we have to find ways of adapting to misfortune, of making something bad into something good. What is this new normal? Some event like the pandemic comes and shakes the hell out of our lives. And then things start we get used to this and we think, okay, this is the new normal. But it's not like that. It's not as though we moved from one plateau to another plateau. Something much more significant has happened. See, when a foreign tourist, imagine an American tourist comes to Delhi and the tourist guide, like I used to be, takes him to the gullies of Chandni Chowk, takes him to all these historical buildings, he sees all these strange people, he sees autos, he sees these ghoda gadis, he sees all kinds of things that shock his senses. But at the end of going through India and the shock to his system of a new system of living, eating, wearing clothes, existing, beliefs, he knows he's got the comfort of going back to America, to something familiar. When major events come and shake up our lives, like this pandemic, there is no going back. So we are suffering from culture shock, and future shock. And future shock, there is no retreat back to the past. But it's not as simple as that either. It's not, as I said, from one plateau you've gone to another plateau. What has happened is that the rate of change and the rate of disruption has so increased in every area of our life that this is going to be a continuous process of change. It's not one plateau to another, it's one step to another. It's like a series of steps. How long those steps last depends. But we are going to be faced with this sense of crisis at all points. Now, it is almost a cliche to say that crisis is opportunity. It's true. I take it a step further. I say crises are our points of power. I'll give you a small example. Imagine yourself going down a highway in a car. Normally, we're used to living our lives like that. We're sort of on autopilot. We carry on driving down and it's a smooth drive, etc. Suddenly, you come to the end of a highway. There's no highway anymore. There's only uncharted pathways in front of you. That's the time when you have to think which path you're going to take. If that highway had not come to an end, if your car had not broken down, you would have carried on because it's habit, it's comfortable, it's सब कुछ चल रहा, सब कुछ ठीक है. Highway खत्म हो गया, गाड़ी रुक गई. आगे कहाँ जाएं? So that's your point of power, because suddenly you realize that there's not just one highway, there are many ways you can take. And depending on the choices you make at that point, you can reinvent yourself, you can reinvent your life, you can ruin your life. But it's your point of power, because suddenly you get to choose a whole new destiny for yourself, for your company, for your organization, for your family. These are absolutely life-changing events that happen to us. And I have found my ways of dealing with this change. I can't presume to tell each one of you what is the best way for you. You know your lives, you know your strengths, you know your weaknesses. You can imagine all the possibilities that exist in front of you, and if not, try and imagine them, because they are far more than you imagine. And when one door closes behind you, many doors open in front of you. What I will say is that we are living at a time which is probably the most exciting time in the history of the human race. In history. Even in India, the wind is in our sails. We have expected to be the fastest growing country in the wake of this pandemic in terms of economic growth. The government is encouraging all kinds of schemes. Our private entrepreneurs, young, bright people are creating unicorns at an unprecedented rate. Not everyone can be a unicorn, but everyone can find a new destiny, because never has there been a time that's so exciting and so favorable to new enterprises, new ideas, new ways of being, and giving you the tools to enable you to do that. Truth is, we have to adapt, because what's under attack is not just your job, your friends' lives, the country's destiny. The whole human race is being attacked. This pandemic doesn't seem to be killing birds and cats and fish and fowl. It's attacking us. And so, as Darwin said, the species that survives is not the strongest, nor even the most intelligent. It is the species that learns to adapt to change. So we must do this for ourselves, for yourselves, for the country, and for the human race. Thank you very much.